Hello everybody, I hope you're having a great day and welcome to my Challenger tier Bel'Veth guide. Today I'm gonna show you the best things to do when playing Bel'Veth and how you can use her to completely stomp the enemy before 15 minutes. I will cover her abilities, builds, and common mistakes that people make so that you can learn how to utilize Bel'Veth to her max potential. So be ready, take notes and enjoy the video. Please leave a like and subscribe and tell me what content you'd like to see more of in the comments. Hi, my name is lDemexl. I'm a League of Legends jungler since Season 5 and I sit Challenger on EU West with the world's best win rate of 69% over 250 games with Bel'Veth. I've been playing many different champions over the past years and I've hit Masters, High Masters past year playing Vi, Poppy, Xin Zhao and Echo. I'm specializing in aggression when it comes to playstyle. I like to invade, gank spam and force the enemy to take fights with high risk for their early game. I'm also an early objective taker with focus on lane priority to maximize our chances of winning both early and late game. And this is the main reason why Bel'Veth has almost perfected my playstyle and why no other champion really feels as good to play as her. To start things off, Bel'Veth is a very new champion to the game, and a lot of people are yet to learn exactly what she can do and how they can play against her. What I've experienced during my climb is the fact that people believe she's a late game scaling champion that doesn't really gank and rather farm throughout the early and mid game. Well, they're wrong. You see, Bel'Veth's main strength is her ability to close insanely large gaps between her and an enemy using Q, also called Void Surge. She can dash in 4 different directions covering a 90-degree angle. While dealing damage to all units she passes through, she also applies on hit effect to the first target hit, but with a 25% reduction. But without her W, the real ganking strength of this ability wouldn't be the same. You see, Bel'Veth's W, also called Above and Below, deals physical damage and knocks up all targets for 0.75 seconds. It also slows them for a duration that scales depending on the amount of points you put into W. But the most important thing is that it resets the closest dash to the target. So if you were to dash downwards, hit a champion with your W that's positioned below you, you would reset that dash and you can use it again to dash through the enemy. There aren't many exclusive combos that must be learned while mastering Bel'Veth, but maximizing her damage output can still be relatively difficult. You see, using your Q isn't just important because of its normal physical damage. As said before, it also procs on hit effects like Kraken, Bork and much else. This means that being able to weave in as many Qs as possible while not losing the target because you dash too far away or not having any dashes left to escape because you used them all at the wrong times, it can be very hard. But moving on to her E, also called Royal Maelstrom, we find this ability that is both great for defense and offense. You see, Bel'Veth uses this ability and becomes stationary and unable to move. But as long as she's in this state, she takes 70% reduced damage, and only other champions can move her. She also hits the target with the lowest HP, dealing bonus damage the lower their percentage HP is. Any type of CC except Roots, Fears and Silence will stop her from attacking. This means that she's especially strong versus certain matchups like Fiddlesticks, where she not only can block most of his burst, but only keep on attacking while silenced and feared, and stop his healing using her own W. This ability also increases her lifesteal, which lets her sustain longer in fights and makes it easier to take objectives early on. Before we talk about her ultimate ability, we will have a quick cover over her main and ultimate passive. Her main passive, being called Death in Lavender, has 3 very important things to keep track of. The first thing being that her attacks are 36% faster than the average champions. But to weigh it all up, her damage, including on-hit effects that are triggered by basic attacks, deals 75% of its original damage. The second part is her basic attack stacks. After using an ability, Bel'Veth gains 2 stacks that increase her attack speed and makes her ghosted. For each basic attack used, 1 stack is removed. She keeps 6 stacks at max, and they disappear after a short while if she isn't using an ability or basic attack. This is why weaving in basic attacks and dashes comes in handy, as she can't keep more than 6 stacks, and the more buffed attacks you manage to get off, the higher the DPS will be. Lastly, for each takedown on a champion or objective, she gains 2 stacks of lavender permanently, and from large minions and large monsters she gains 1 stack. These stacks permanently increases her attack speed with 0.28 to 1% attack speed, depending on level, and it caps out at 1% on level 13. This passive has no cap, which means that it stacks infinitely, just like Nasus, Veigar, Swain, Senna, and Sion. You might have seen Bel'Veth attack with an insanely high attack speed, even without little tempo. This is because her attack speed doesn't cap at 2.5 like the normal champion, but scales all the way up to 90. But reaching 90 doesn't really happen in any normal game of League of Legends, as it would require an insanely long game with insane amounts of stacks, with a specific build, specific runes, and a draft where the champions boost your attack speed. You could probably find yourself around 4 up to 5 attacks per second with Conqueror in late game, if you kept farming well and kept a good kill participation. For the ultimate passive, which she gains up to level 6. For each basic attack or on hit effect, she marks the enemy hit for 5 seconds. This refreshes on subsequent hits. Every second attack against the marked target deals bonus true damage, and it generates a stack of the Endless Banquet, which increases the bonus true damage by the same value. But this also stacks infinitely against champions, but up to 5 against epic monsters. So attacking something else will also reset this passive. You see, it's very strong in isolated 1v1s, but as soon as you hit something else, for example a dragon, it resets, or another champion. So you'd rather fight people in duels than in team fights if you really want to maximize your damage. It's kinda like Kha'Zix, for example. Using his Q on isolated targets really boosts his damage compared to around other people. So that's why you want to try to find those 1v1s and pick-offs in fights. But now, finally, her ultimate, also called Endless Banquet. When scoring a takedown on a champion, assist or kill, or dragon, a coral spawns for 15 seconds, which she can pick up. When picking up the coral, she slows all the targets nearby by ramping up from 25 to 99%, and deals true damage to all targets inside of the end of the cast. She gains true form for 1 minute, which boosts her max HP, her attack speed, her attack range, and out of combat movement speed. And a fun thing to know is that her so-called Ura Ura animation only can be activated while in true form. When scoring a takedown on either Herald or Baron, an enhanced Cora will spawn, which gives her true form for 3 minutes. When standing close to minions, both allied and enemy minions, every dying one will spawn a Void Remora, also called Void Fish. It has increased movement speed, attack damage, but compared to normal minions, it has a significantly nerfed amount of health. Cannon minion spawns 1 ranged and 1 melee, while super minion spawns 2 of each. This makes her insanely strong at pushing turrets, as later on even Remoras get buffed by Baron. And while in the enemy base, up to 3 waves plus her own waves turn into even more minions, and all stands by her side. But enough of the abilities for now. We have covered her base kit and what she does, but how do we utilize this, and why did I in the beginning say that I didn't really like to AFK farm and scale into late game? Well, this brings us on to the next topic. How do you climb with Bel'Veth? I like to treat Bel'Veth as a champion that transitions into different playstyles throughout the game. In the early game, I rate her as a duelist early ganker, since she can gap close at long range like Jarvan, while having a kit that lets her 1v1 most champs. At the same time as the game moves on, she turns into more of an assassin or support bruiser. This is depending on the state of the game. If you're very ahead, your focus should be at invading and building damage items like Kraken and Boar, since almost no one will be able to 1v1 you in the jungle. But if you fall behind, or rather your team is ahead but you're not, you'd rather look for a more bruiser build like Bork into Frostfire Gauntlet, and then support your carry lanes by sacrificing some of your camps for ganks, pressure, and objectives. If the game goes into late game, Bel'Veth turns into a tank duelist. With an extremely high variety of builds, she can utilize many different items depending on matchups. It all lets her be both tanky and deal insane amounts of damage. And one of my most favorite builds is Kraken Slayer into Blade of the Rune King, Then either Merc Treads or Steel Caps depending on the enemy champions, Death Dance, Force of Nature, and Titanic Hydra. This build is strong against almost all team comps, as it's very rare that someone picks a full AD or full AP team. It does happen, and you can switch out Force of Nature for something like Randuin's or Death Dance into, for example, Spirit Visage. But this build has everything. It has Anti-Burst, it has healing, true damage, HP percentage damage, both types of resistances, and great amounts of health. It lets her fight into a very split damage comp, while melting everything from swishy champs to tanks. So before you really decide to pick up Bel'Veth, make sure to learn the strength of all items. And it's gonna make it easier for you to choose what exactly to build. But how do I personally usually play a game when I pick Bel'Veth? Well, as usual, it depends on what champions my team got. I'm always a fan of CC tanks like Nautilus, Leona, Shen, Sejuani for example. These champs are seen as top or support champs and are great for setting up ganks. You see, people tend to panic flash after getting hit by Shen's Fear, Sejuani's Freeze, while seeing Bel'Veth coming into lane. But what they forget is that not even their flash is enough to escape Bel'Veth's gap close. This is the reason why I always play flash myself, since I without problem can gap close, reach them with my W, and finish off the kill with Q and E, and then escape easily using the dashes I didn't use for the gank. And after this happens, it's just the most free ganks you could ever find on the market. Keep repeating ganks on the same lane, doing the same thing, playing out of vision, surprise the enemy, and it doesn't have any flash anymore, so 1 or 2 repeated ganks are easily pulled off with a secured kill. And if you give the kills to your teammate, he might be able to close out the game from that lane. You know, letting your team fall ahead instead of falling behind can be very, very important. It lets you secure objectives, and since you're Bel'Veth, you love heralds. After securing Herald, you can easily push a turret. You can dive with the help of support or top lane if they're ahead, and with your Voidlings and Herald, you melt the turrets. So secure that Herald and make sure that you use your true form. So back to why I said I don't like to AFK farm into late game, and it's just because of this. Since I find it more of a coin flip letting my team decide how the game will go rather than me being the one behind the steering wheel. I can easily get several lanes ahead by sacrificing my farm for enemy summoner spells and my team getting experience and gold lead. You always have to remember that by giving to others, you'll receive later. By giving my bot lane a lead, I receive Herald, Dragon, and the power to invade my enemy jungler, to steal his camps and sometimes even kill him. What I sacrificed was a small amount for a much higher reward, and all I needed was to be patient, and accept the fact that I won't win the game alone and that I need my team by my side. A great example was one of my last games before hitting Challenger. I went against one of EU's best top laners, Drutut, and using just a few early ganks with 2 engaged champions, Pyke and Samira, we easily crushed Ezreal Yuumi. And they were very quickly creating a 3-level lead, and after securing Herald they opened the game. Here's a clip from Drutut's stream. Make sure to check out his content in general, since it's both extremely funny and educational.
Well, GG.
Really? Hello, happy birthday, Drut.
Bastard!
It was a good game. I just won a half an hour game to lose LP. For the game I just won. I am +5 after the half an hour action game. Well, let's queue up.
Of course, I made sure to report his team for opening the game, since there were still 2 players trying their best to win the game, and unfortunately it's hard when 3 people open and go AFK in base. Moving on to the last topic of this video. Common mistakes new Bel'Veth player makes. We have already covered some of the most common mistakes that people do. One is spending too much time farming rather than ganking, and second of all, not knowing enough about items and their strengths into certain team comps. But some of the more crucial mistakes can be found when we take a look into priority and mechanics. You see, your main priority should be to force the enemy to play around your strengths, this being heavily based around Herald and Baron. because people know that Bel'Veth gets very strong after consuming Herald and Baron and will therefore be quick at warding and creating pressure around the pit. But if you're able to plan ahead of them and put your team in a position where the enemy can contest Herald without risking almost losing the game, then you can easily secure the objective. And you can use your true form to strongly push in the incoming 3 minutes. When people go to Herald, they take it without really thinking twice. It could be warded, your laners might not have any prio, and you might have lost track of the enemy jungler. All of these factors are crucial if you want to secure the Herald, because you have to make sure that you can take it without risking to lose more than what you would gain. You see, pressure on lanes also makes it much harder for the enemy jungler to invade, since your laners easily can break off, contest them in the jungle, while the enemy laners can't, because the farm is crashing under the turret. So make sure that you create good line of vision around Herald, make your lanes push the waves, and plan on how you're gonna use the objective, since you don't want to let Bel'Veth's potential go to waste. Lastly, people tend to engage into fights like there's no tomorrow. Mechanics are important no matter what champion you play, and when it comes to Bel'Veth you have to know what to focus on. People forget that her ult can deal more damage than the rest of her kit combined. If she hits 4 people with a core roll, she deals true damage to all targets. It reduces the HP by a large amount even on tanks. You can also use your gap closers to get on top of the backline. You can CC the ADC and you can win the entire fight. You might have champions like Rakan and Samira that can follow you as long as you switch the frontline focus onto you instead. In the end, it all comes down to practice. Doing it over and over again, limit testing, is what makes you better. You'll be able to quickly recognize when and when not to engage, and remember that just 1 second can decide if you win an entire team fight or not. It's all up to you and the amount of work you're ready to put into the game to really master it. But with that said, I hope you enjoyed my guide, and I see you on the Rift.